Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, June 3rd, and I am heading off to the plant store to go buy some plants because it's summer. Well, it's almost summer, and I still haven't really finished all my gardening and gotten everything ready on the deck. So I'm going to go do that this morning, and then I'm going to get some groceries, and then I'm going to read, hopefully. I've started my first book for the Reading Women Month and the queue, and it's going well so far, so I'd like to read a little bit more in there amidst the day-to-day cleaning and etc that has to happen on my one day off this week. So I will check in with you again later. Hey everyone, today is Wednesday, June 5th. I don't even know what day it is. I've been having trouble sleeping this week and having trouble focusing, although today got a little bit better, so that's good. But I thought I would just check in with you about where I am so far in my books for Reading Women Month. So I think I'm about 55% of the way through I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings audiobook. And it's very good, you know. My Angelou had such a amazing presence and ability to just immerse you with her voice. Her voice is so warm. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it. It just transports me. I usually listen to audiobooks in the car on the way to work and back. And although the rental period from my Libby app is about 21 days, and I try to get audiobooks that are about 9 hours or less because they're manageable within 21 days. It's possible that I can take it out again, but I always want to try to get it done in time, because if for some reason someone else has it on hold, I'm kind of screwed and I can't finish the book. So I have 6 days left of the book, so I have to listen to a lot of it in a really short time, but hopefully I will be finishing that one this week. The next one I started was The Queue by Basma Abdel Aziz. It started out very kind of factual. Because she's a journalist, I felt like that you could really hear or read that influence in her writing at the beginning. So for the first 2 chapters, I would say, or the first 2 sections, she was very much from this journalistic point of view. So information, sharing information, but not a lot of character building. And then I just finished the third, I believe it was the third section last night, or maybe it was the second section. because I'm really not that far in. I'm only 41 pages in. And then the third section had a bit of whatever chapter I was reading had a bit more relationship building between the characters, so you were starting to get more of a picture and tying these characters who are waiting in this long queue for the gate, which is the authority in this authoritarian city to open. You're starting to, and it's really interesting because it's setting up this world where people are just standing in line all day and they save each other's places, and there's like a whole etiquette that develops around standing in this queue and waiting for getting permission to have surgery or to finish your schooling, or all these very arbitrary control mechanisms that an authoritarian regime would have. So yeah, so far it's still interesting to me. And I also started The Wonder by Donoghue, and I am a couple of chapters in, or no, not even. This book is divided into two fairly large chapters, so I think it's maybe 6 different sections, and they all have a title based on the focus that they're coming in from, I believe. So I'm still in chapter 1, which is nurse. So it's the nurse's perspective as she's traveling from England to Ireland, to a very small village in the central Ireland. So you hear her prejudices and her assumptions as she's entering into this village, about who is her employer and why they've employed her. She is a nurse who was trained by Florence Nightingale, so she has this kind of prestige that is attached to her career. She's a widowed woman, and I like it. I like the narrative voice so far, the world, the immersion into this really very small, pious village is quite charming. Hi everybody. I was just starting page 47 of the queue, and I find it so interesting how you can be reading 2 different books, so The Queue and The Wonder, and they can use similar terminology, and it feels like this very serendipitous, weird connection. So in The Queue just now, they use the term manna from heaven, and I don't feel like that's a term that's used very frequently in any of the books that I read. And last night when I was reading The Wonder, the girl who's supposedly surviving on nothing, she hasn't eaten for 4 months, and the nurse is trying to figure out how she's surviving. The girl says that she survives on manna from heaven. I just found it really funny that both these books, completely randomly selected, happen to have that same term, which I've never even noticed in a book before. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm out here on my deck, and it's really nice to be out here in the sun. So I'm just going to keep reading for a while, and I'll check in again later. Good evening, everyone. It is Friday, June 7th, and I am beat this week. This week has left me feeling extremely tired, and I struggled most of the week to focus and get anything really productive done. But I just wanted to share with you, I'm still reading along here. And another crossover has happened in these two books that I'm reading at the same time, which is just really intriguing me. And I don't think I've ever had this happen before, where I've been reading two books that are seemingly so different. And just, like, I never would have ever thought there was anything in common about them when I chose them. And yet I'm seeing another crossover. So one of the things about the Q is that the author is really trying to describe the bureaucracy and red tape and impossible circumstances of people living under this regime called the Gate. And part of that is that they have to get permission for medical procedures. They have to get permission for many things, but we're following primarily a character who is in dire need of an operation, and he is going through this ridiculous, like, infuriating bureaucracy in order to try to get permission to get this operation. I don't want to spoil the plot of the story, but so all the little steps that he's supposed to go through are kind of described in here. And I was reading The Wonder this afternoon, which is set in Ireland in 1850 and is in no way connected with a dystopian, Cairo, or it's not really set in Cairo. It's an unnamed Middle Eastern city. And as I'm reading through this, there's this amazing passage between Lib, who is the nurse in the story, who's trying to uncover the mystery of how this child is surviving without eating for 4 months. And she's talking to this journalist who is, of course, in the town for this opportune moment to, try to get the story, get the scoop, and get it out into the papers and use it for his own acclaim. And they were actually having this brilliant conversation, which took this book from me from a really pleasant 4-star read to something beyond that. It pushed this book into another category for me. And her, what the worst part of being a nurse during in Crimea, in the Crimean War. So she was a nurse under Florence Nightingale, the famous nurse. And he asked her what was the worst part of it. She goes into this passage describing the bureaucracy of the Crimean War. So let me read this to you. What was the worst of it? Byrne's bluntness made her flinch, but she answered, the paperwork. How so? To get a soldier a bed, say, one took a colored slip to the ward officer, and then to the purveyor to have it countersigned, whereupon, and only then, the commissariat would issue the bed, Lib told him. For a liquid or meat diet or medicine, or even for an urgently required opiate, one had to bring a different colored form to a doctor and persuade him to find the time to make requisition of the relevant steward and have it countersigned by 2 other officers, by which point the patient would very likely be dead. I just think it's so interesting that both these books are talking about something the same in that little passage and I had no idea that there would be any connection between these books at all when I started reading them. It's interesting, isn't it? It feels very, it's such a coincidence, and it's also very enhancing of each book that the other one kind of offers the same thing, but just from a different viewpoint, a different part of the world, a different region. And you kind of think, wow, humans really do have these kind of screwed up concepts that we place on top of things and think that it's making things efficient when really it's making us all very inhumane. So that's my thoughts for today. everybody, I just finished The Wonder by Donoghue. This is a really good book. Emma Donoghue is a very talented storyteller. I was almost immediately drawn into the story and loved, found it's really easy to read. It's, really pacey because you are automatically kind of drawn into this mystery and of how this girl is surviving without eating. But it is about so much more than that. It delves deep into differences between being Irish and being English. It goes into the differences between being a devoutly religious culture versus rejecting religion for science. It goes into redemption, how to let go of mistakes and lies and move forward. It talks about when your beliefs become a burden or when they become a hindrance for the people around you, where your responsibility lies in terms of caring for the young. Are you allowed to give them free choice? Should you, there's so many amazing questions and just such a satisfying story. I mean, there are parts of it that are really hard to take because if you are sensitive to books where children are being neglected, then I would say, be wary of this one a bit, because that part is very hard to take when you're reading it. The kind of, not just the dismissal of the child's point of view, but also the dismissal of women's point of views in general. I mean, you're talking about Victorian Ireland, so this isn't, a feminist story. Everything about how Emma Donoghue put this story together was just well crafted, and I would almost say fresh in a way. She allowed the differences between Lib, who is the English nurse, and the Irish village, so all the people in the village who are Irish, she allowed them to never understand each other. I think a lot of the time when you have the plot of the outsider coming into a new town, what ends up happening is the story focuses on that outsider learning about this new culture and coming to love it, coming to accept it, coming to integrate themselves into it. And that doesn't happen in this story. She never changes her belief in what is right to that degree. She stays true to the fundamentals of who she is as a human. And you're rooting for her because you feel like she's doing what she should be doing to help this child. So, wow. It really swept me up. I read this really quickly, and it's 290 pages. It flies by. You really want to know what's going to happen. You really want to figure out, if someone's feeding this girl, if she's actually surviving on nothing, and why she's doing it, and who's manipulating her, or is she being manipulated, or all these questions are really, really interesting, and just this is a great story. So I would really recommend it as 5 stars for me. And I feel, I'm still reading the queue, but I do feel like the nature of this story has been overshadowed by The Wonder. The Wonder was just so gripping and so good. And the queue, it's not a very emotional story. So I I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to keep reading it. It's not a very long book, but it has not in any way gripped me or wrapped me up the way The Wonder did. So now that I'm done The Wonder, maybe I can dig into this. Hi everybody, I just finished I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, and it was a great memoir. It's part one. I thought I actually had part two, The Heart of a Woman, but it's not. I think that's like the fifth one. So there's many volumes that she wrote about her life, and I'm interested to read them all eventually. As I said before, it was very episodic, so there wasn't as much continuity between certain parts as I would have hoped, but I did really like it. I give it 4 stars, and there were many parts of her life that were very interesting, and she broke barriers and did a lot of important things, and that I think will just continue on in her next autobiographies. So I'm glad that I finally read it, and it was wonderful to listen to it in her voice and hear her tell her own story. I think that made it even more interesting. And there were a few relationships she had that I wish would have been elaborated on. Mrs. Flowers, who was really important and influential to her, she didn't really elaborate on that. But her life was so full of interesting and, in a lot of ways we would think now, traumatic experiences that I guess she couldn't focus too much on certain parts of her childhood when there was so much to tell. So yeah, I'll check in again later. Hi everybody. So I've just spent the whole morning of my day off doing administrative tasks for various places that I volunteer for, which has caused me to be slightly irritated because administrative tasks always feel they're so important and you have to do them, and yet they are so frustrating. And so I want to do something fun for the last hour and a half I have to myself before I go get my kids from school. I'm gonna finish this, which I'm reading for Reading Women Month. I don't think this is necessarily fun because I'm not particularly enjoying this book, unfortunately. I'm not sure. I don't think it's an issue of translation. I think it's more just a style of writing that I'm kind of not connecting with. Basma Abdel Aziz's writing style is very journalistic and it's very matter of fact, and there's not a lot of connecting going on with me for the characters. I care enough about one of the characters to want to finish the book. I want to see what happens with him and whether he makes it, but yeah, I just haven't really enjoyed it as a story, so I'm a little disappointed in it, and you know, that's kind of how it goes. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I'll wrap up this vlog once I have finished this book and move on to my next reads for June. Hi. So, finish this. I would not recommend it. In terms of a story, Very frustrating. I think maybe there's like a cultural perspective here that I didn't get. And so as like Western minded person living in the type of society that I live in, understanding what is going on in that book is a little bit beyond my comprehension. The whole main plot of the book was the fact that this uprising happened and the authority state used bullets and shot people, and that they then decided that they were going to prevent these people from having the bullets removed in order to prove that they never used bullets. And so the whole time you are following this man who has a bullet lodged in his pelvis and it is slowly killing him, and you are hoping that somehow he's going to get this bullet removed, and he's supposed to go through all these bureaucratic processes, and his friends help him and end up, you know, getting hurt in the process. And the doctor who could have helped him right from the beginning and chose not to because he was trying to be a law-abiding citizen. You follow his story, and you know, if you want to read this book, then you probably should not listen to this next part. But the guy dies in the end because the doctor never gives him the operation, even though right at the last minute he decides to give him the operation, and then he backs out and they wait too long and the guy dies from this bullet. And that's the end of the story. And the girl that he loved loses her mind. So I think, all in all, this story had, to me, no purpose other than to show you the horribleness of a dictatorship like authoritarian government system, which I think we can all agree on already. So I feel like there was a kind of there were things that she was trying to do in this story, and I'm sure that for, you know, what's going on in Egypt and Egyptian politics and Egyptian way of life, that this makes a lot of sense. But for me, as a novel, there was almost nothing enjoyable about it. So that's the end of that book. I think I have to give that 2 stars. I don't want to, but I got nothing out of that. So my Reading Women Month bingo has been accomplished. I have gotten bingo. I'm very sad that I didn't like this book so much, though, but you know, that's part of it. So I had a 5-star, a 4-star, and a 2-star experience, and I got bingo. So that's the end of this vlog, and I will check in again with another video of some sort, and I hope you're all having a great day, and thanks for watching.